Well, like Pastor Fillmore said, my name's John, and my wife and I and our family, we live in Northern California. We live kind of outside of Sacramento at an amazing church called the Father's House, which we're blessed to be at. And because I miss them so much, I brought a picture of my family today for you guys to see. And that is my wife, Natalie. And as you can tell, we have 3 daughters, okay? So you can call me Kobe. I'm a girl dad, okay? And you can start praying for my sanity. You can start praying for my bank account. I need you in my life, okay? That's our oldest daughter. Her name is Ava Noelani. And my second daughter, her name is Nina Lulu. And my third daughter, his name is Lola Joy. And Nina is as crazy as that face she is making in that picture, okay? Don't get it twisted. But my wife and I, her name is Natalie, and we celebrated 7 years of marriage in June, which is awesome. Come on, in California, that's a big deal, being married for 7 years. But, I wish that my wife and I had this, awesome, love story. It actually is kind of crazy. We actually did meet the first hour that I moved to Florida. It's wild. I was from New York. We met the first hour that I was there. But the crazy thing is, it took me, almost a year to tell her that I work up enough courage to tell her that I like her, okay? I didn't have a lot of courage, a lot of bravery in that moment. And for some reason, I chose a youth conference as a moment to tell her that I liked her. I don't know what I was thinking. But I took her aside, and my heart was hammering. My, was up in my throat. I'm like, oh my gosh. I said, hey, Natalie, I just want to let you know I like you. And she said, thank you. Which is not what you want to hear in a moment like that. And she began to tell me, hey, I'm just not ready to date anybody. It's not going to be right now. And I thought she meant okay, a couple weeks, a month. 6 months later, we eventually went on our first date. And I remember in that time of getting to know her that I had a lot of friends that had known her. We'd been in similar social circles, so I'd heard things about her. But there was no substitute for actually getting to know a person, right? If some of the people in the front row have met my wife, my wife, I didn't know, but she is instant joy. She walks into a room, she lights up a room, she's kind to everyone, okay? I did not know some other things about my wife. I did not know that the first time we ever went on a date, she was not the kind of girl that wanted to go to a salad place. She wanted real food, okay? I remember I tried to take her to a healthy place, a tapas place. Tapas is from the devil. Small plates, big money. But she said, hey, this is what I want to do. And she goes, no, I don't want to eat there. But a couple of things that I just did not know, I found out. I wish my father-in-law and my mother-in-law or her brother would have told me. I didn't realize this, so my wife talks in her sleep, okay? So I did not find that out. We got back from our honeymoon. We were in our first apartment. And in the middle of the night, my wife wakes up and is screaming bloody murder, okay? So I jump out of bed. I put a shirt on because I don't want to get beat up without a shirt on. Gotta make sure. And I'm freaking out. I'm like, who is in our house? What is happening right now? And I look down and she's just completely asleep. She's just knocked out. You know what the crazy thing is too? After 7 years, when it happens, I'm not even fazed anymore. I'll just be like, back to sleep, babe. Got this. But here's the thing. I've learned in my life that there's a really big difference between hearing something and actually experiencing it for yourself. And my concern, the longer I've been in church, the longer I've been around the things of God, is that when we come into environments like this, even though you are at least casually interested in God or you got convinced by someone to be in church today, I've just learned from my own life and from observing other people that it does not mean that you've had an encounter with Jesus. And in fact, I think oftentimes we become so good at church culture and the things that surround God, or this thing that becomes a weekly part of our routine, or something that is going to somehow make us feel better, that we don't understand that the reason why we have gathered here today is because we actually believe that as we worship and as His word is proclaimed, that we can have an encounter with God. This is not another social hour. This is not a place that we could have done anything, especially, good God, on a sunny day in Seattle in July. We could have done anything today. But I believe that if you have found yourself in church today, it is because we want to have a real encounter with Jesus. And what I've just seen in my own life is oftentimes what I am doing is living off of rumors of God. Things that I've heard other people say God has done in their life, but I've never experienced for myself. Things that maybe because I've been around the things of church that I know even the right language to say when I come in environments like this, but in the deep place of your heart, you say, I don't know if I have actually experienced this for myself. I believe today that God wants to have that kind of moment with you because he's that good and because he's in this place. Today our text is Luke chapter 8. And Luke chapter 8 comes at a really unique time in Jesus' ministry. It's fairly early. The disciples have just begun to follow him. But in Luke chapter 8, the author of the Gospel of Luke attempts to show us that Jesus is king over the most powerful forces that these people and any people would have known. Begins in the middle of Luke chapter 8 with a story that if you're familiar with church, you may know of Jesus and the disciples getting into a boat. And in the middle of the night, a storm comes up. And at that time, and it's really the truth for us today, weather was something like storms, tsunamis, hurricanes, things like that, that would have felt so out of control, so unpredictable, so unknowable. And it says that in the middle of the night, as they are freaking out because a storm has arisen, they wake up Jesus and they say, hey, Jesus, do you not care that we're dying? And it says that Jesus, in a moment, says, peace, be still. And the storm stops, showing us that Jesus is king over the natural world. And then when we get across the water, we meet a person that's possibly the most possessed, the most oppressed, the most mentally ill person in the Bible. It's a man who lives in a place called Gennesaret. It says that he has been tormented by many demons. And when Jesus walks onto the scene, it doesn't say he has to fight him. It doesn't say he has to do a deliverance training. It doesn't say there's some good thing that has to happen. It says immediately he casts them out, showing us that if Jesus is king over the natural world, he is also king over the spiritual world. And then when we come into this section of Luke chapter 8, Jesus is returning to his hometown of Capernaum. And it says this, now on the other side of the lake, in verse 40, the crowds welcomed Jesus because they had been waiting for him. And it says that a man named Jairus, a leader of the local synagogue, came and fell at Jesus' feet, pleading with him to come home with him. His only daughter, who was about 12 years old, was dying. As Jesus went with him, he was surrounded by the crowds. So get this scene with me for a minute. Jesus, before he can even get back to his hometown, after the crazy day that he's had, there are already people waiting for him on the shore. Now, I want you to ask you a question as we begin today, right? Imagine yourself in this scene. You're tired, you've been up for a while, and you step onto shore, and not only is there a crowd, there is a man who is upset. There is a man who is going through tragedy that falls at his feet and says, please come, my daughter is sick. Now, the reason why I believe living off of rumors of God or someone else's faith is so dangerous is because when we do that, it gives us the opportunity to believe lies about Jesus' character. And although there are many of them I could have chosen, I believe that Luke chapter 8 and the verses we're going to read highlights 3 specific ones. But I want to ask you the question today of what look you think was on Jesus' face as that man fell at his feet. Do you think he was annoyed? Do you think he was frustrated? Do you think he was exasperated, that he was tired? Oftentimes, the revealer of what you believe about Jesus' character is in the face that you would think he would make in a moment like that. I think sometimes the way that I approach God is like he is some person that is so bothered by my needs. Like, how many people in here, if your order is wrong, that thing is going back? Raise your hand. My people, okay? How many people in here, you are like, I'll just eat it, I'm allergic to it, I might die from it, but I'm gonna just eat it, okay? Like, that's fine, raise your hand, okay? We see you too, okay? But I'm in the first category, and I get extremely frustrated when I walk up to an employee and they make a face at me like they are so bothered by the fact that I asked them to do their job, okay? Like they are so frustrated. And I worked in food service and restaurants for a long time. I'm not here being like, oh, I've never done this job. But I get frustrated when it's like some 18-year-old is looking at me and like, oh, I've got to put another order in. I'm going to bring it back, I swear, okay? I wonder today if that is how you think Jesus feels when you bring him your needs. Oh, you again? That same sin you've asked for prayer for a ton of times? That same healing that you've been asking in your family for a long time? That same request for a new job that you've been begging me for? So I believe the first lie that we can have us miss Jesus' character is this: my problems don't matter to Jesus. And we have to look at his response to Jairus. A man falls at his feet, does something socially unacceptable, and look what it says. As Jesus went. There is no discussion. There is no, how long have you been going to church? There is no, what's your sin life look like? It says, a man falls and Jesus goes. Why? Because you and I have a Savior that is not repelled, intimidated, frustrated by your need, but he is drawn to your need. It is in his nature. It's in his character. He's not mustering something up. There's a thing inside of our God that says, when my kids come to me with a need, I run towards them. And so he's on the way. He immediately goes. But then our story starts to get interesting because at first glance, it's like, oh, this is a story about a dad and a daughter. And it says this: as Jesus went with them, he was surrounded by the crowds. Now, that word that is used is only used 2 times in the Gospel of Luke, and it is better translated as choked out. So this is like you leaving a concert or leaving a Seahawks game at Lumen Field, okay? It is crowded. This is like a parade. He has shown up back to Capernaum, and there are people everywhere surrounding Jesus. And it says, as he went, there was a woman in the crowd who had suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding, and she could find no cure. And coming up behind Jesus, she touched the fringe of his robe, and what? Immediately the bleeding stopped. And Jesus stopped and says, who touched me? Jesus said. And everyone denied it. And Peter said, Master, the whole crowd is pressing up against you, which is a nice way of Peter saying, Jesus, a lot of people touched you. But then Jesus said, someone deliberately touched me, for I felt healing power go out from me. See, what we begin to see is there's a difference between being around Jesus and deliberately grabbing a hold of him. And in a crowd where hundreds of people were touching him, one person out of deliberation and desperation receives a miracle. One person doesn't say, I'm just going to bump into Jesus. I'm just going to be near Jesus. I'm just going to be around the things of Jesus. I'm just going to be a part of the crowd and the hoopla and this parade that's going on, this thing that's going on in Seattle, Washington. There's a difference between being around it and saying, no, if Jesus is in the room, I'm grabbing a hold of him. And what we begin to see is that when deliberation and desperation enter the scene, healing power goes out from Jesus. He doesn't say, oh, I knew it. He doesn't say, oh, I felt it. He says, I knew it because when someone grabbed a hold of me, healing power left. See, Jesus is always drawn to the desperation of his kids. I cannot promise you that your talent is going to draw God's attention. I cannot promise you that your finances are going to draw God's attention. I can't promise you that your singing voice, I heard some today, I can't promise that's going to get God's attention. But I can promise you, your desperation is going to get his attention. And when you would be willing to say, I'm not just going to sit in these rows, but God, I'm going to grab a hold of you, watch his healing power come into your life. And then our story goes on, and Jesus says, okay, someone deliberately grabbed a hold of me. I felt healing power go out from me. And then in 47, it says, when the woman realized that she could not stay hidden, she began to tremble and fell to her knees in front of him. The whole crowd had to hear her explain why she had touched him and that she had been immediately healed. And right away, we can get on edge in a story like this. Jesus, what are you doing? Are you trying to embarrass this woman? Are you trying to expose this woman? Are you trying to put her on blast? Should she not have grabbed a hold of you? We begin to see that that's not any of Jesus' intention in the story. And in fact, after she says it, he looks at her, uses a fatherly term and says, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. At first glance to this text, if you don't look at it, you may not understand the full desperate place that this woman is in. Not only, if any of you have gone through long illness in your family or in your own life, you know what that can do to your heart. And for 12 years, she had a disease that would not be healed. Mark's account of this story says that she has spent every dollar that she has trying to receive a cure, and nothing has happened. So she is not only in an emotional desperate place, a physical desperate place, she's in a financially desperate place. In addition to that, because of her condition, she would not have been allowed to go into church. She was not allowed to be in community that everyone else in her city was allowed to go into. So we also find out that she is in a relationally and spiritually desperate place. And so at first glance, we see a story of a woman that I have to guess, if it says she only touched the fringe of his robe, that she's just trying to barely grab and then go back into hiding. And she's isolated. She's, I just want to, if I could just touch him, and then I'll just slink back into the crowd, back to depression, back to isolation, back to where I've been. And what Jesus is unwilling to do in your and my life is heal surface level needs when restoration is needed. See, the second lie that we believe about Jesus that has us miss his character is Jesus only heals parts of my life. The woman's intention is not, please bring me in front of this town that doesn't like me, that I've been asking for money for years, that have ostracized me. Her intention is heal and sneak back into darkness. But our God is a God that is unwilling to heal surface level things. He desires to do something real. See, Jesus is fully capable of healing you in private, but he is so good, he wants to restore you in public. And so what is happening in this moment, he's not exposing her. He's not putting her on blast. He is saying, daughter, yeah, you got your healing, but I'm about to give you your restoration. And all these places that you've not been allowed to be in, you can go in now with your head held high. Now, if you're like me, oftentimes we have a reason why we have found ourselves in church. We oftentimes have very surface level healing reasons of why we're in church. When I ask people, man, why did you find one church? Oh, I wanted to make more friends. Great reason to find church. That's not a bad reason to be here. Hey, I wanted to find a guy or a girl. There's a lot of young adults in this room, and that might be a good reason why you're here as well. People trying to seek Jesus. But sometimes it's a little deeper stuff. I said, well, I went through a horrible breakup last year, and yes, I would love to be with someone new. Come in with an agenda into God's house, and the problem is God is oftentimes not interested in the agenda that I have, but the thing that I actually need. So we come in, God, I want to meet somebody, and God is like, that's awesome. I will do that someday. But our deeper issue we have to work with is that you have bounced from relationship to relationship to relationship to relationship, trying to fill a hole because of what happened in your parents' marriage. Say, God, I want to meet someone. Or God, I need a new job. And I want to get out of this job. I hate my boss. I want to get out of this thing. And God says, okay, you're in a job that you prayed for a year ago. And now you want to get out. So I know you're here. You're like, okay, chill. Like, we don't know you that well. Like, I know you're from this area, but you're not our pastor. Here's why I'm so concerned about that progression. Because it quickly goes from, God, I have this need. You did not do exactly what I asked you to do. You must not be real. God, I have this need, this thing I wrote down, the reason why I'm in church. You did not do exactly what I asked you to do in my timing. You must not care about me. And I believe our city is full of people who have gone through that progression and deconstructed their faith. And the issue is not whether or not God wanted to show up in your life. The issue is that you put him into a box and said, this is what showing up in my life looks like. And I promise you, 12 years of isolation and depression, that woman had no interest in going in front of her hometown. But Jesus says, I am going to do the real work you need, not the small work you want. He says, I don't have an interest in healing the thing that's this deep when there's something much deeper that we need to heal. And I am going to solve that. I am going to answer that, but it's going to be in my timing, not yours. We have such a low perspective on what we need healing for. We walk around asking for Band-Aids when you got a broken arm. Saying, God, heal this one little thing, and God's like, your leg needs to be set in a cast. The desire of the Father is that you would be made whole. We continue on in this passage, and we've just gone on this crazy deviation. Remember that this was supposed to be a story about a dad asking for prayer for his daughter. And it says that in this moment, he says, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. And it says, verse 49, while he was still speaking to her, a messenger arrived from the home of Jairus, the leader of the synagogue, and he told him, your daughter is dead. There's no use troubling the teacher now. Now, I'm human. I'm a dad. How in that moment could you not get frustrated? Like, it seems like from our story that Jairus would have had to wake up in the middle of night, that he would have had to get to the seashore of Galilee. And it says that when Jesus puts his foot on the rocks, he's there. So he's boxing people out like, I'm getting this miracle from my daughter. He falls at Jesus' feet. In other gospel accounts, it says that people told Jesus, you should do this for Jairus because he's a leader of our synagogue. He has done a lot for our people. This is a religious man. This is a church man. And he would have stood there and said, okay, I'm going to get this miracle. I've done everything right. And they go on the parade. They go on this show. And how could you not be like, Jesus, I'm glad you healed the crazy lady in town who all of us are kind of tired of. It doesn't seem like there's anything happening in her life. She's older. My daughter is dead. The third lie that we believe that has us miss the character of Jesus is Jesus wants to do it for them, but not for me. And every one of us in this room has a them in our mind. A person that person in your office, the good stuff is always happening for them. Like, oh, I'm so happy you got another promotion. That is great. Oh, you just got engaged. Awesome. Oh, you're going on another vacation. Happy for you. See, how could we not, in a moment where it seems like God is moving in other people's lives, catch something that says, why would you do it for them, but not for me? And for the sake of our teaching today, I want to put that into a category because there are real moments in life that I'm going to call Jairus seasons, where you are praying for God to do something, but it is happening in someone else's life. Where you are on your knees asking God for a miracle, and your people in your dinner party, the miracle is happening for them. And what I've learned in my life is that a Jairus season cannot be pushed through, it has to be discipled. Meaning this, I do not get to just say, I'm just gonna work through this thing. I have to say, God, only you can bring me through this thing. There's an amazing couple at our church in California. They serve as our worship pastors. And they have 3 daughters just like I have, but with their first daughter, this horrible medical tragedy happened where a doctor who was not paying attention misdiagnosed their daughter, and for the rest of her life that she's here on earth before Jesus calls her home, she's in a chair, she has constant seizures. He's one of the biggest inspirations in my life, and I remember talking to Pastor Rich, and I said, man, what was that season of life like? And he goes, you know, the hard part, although it is extremely hard to watch what Jane goes through, it's his daughter's name, was not that I had to watch her go through it. It's that I still had to serve at the altar ministry and pray for other people. See, the hardest part was that I had to sit down with people and pray over healthy children and dedicate them to God's house. The hardest part is that in our church, we're a church of prayer, and we're a church where we see God's Spirit move and people get healed. And he said, I saw miracle after miracle happen, and my daughter's sitting in a wheelchair. So what will you do with your heart? What's our alternative other than to keep praying? Do you really want to be that person that when someone gets talked about well in a room, you have to say, oh, actually, they're not that great? Do you really want to be the person that says, yeah, well, if you really knew what was going on in their life, you wouldn't think it was God blessing them? Because when a Jairus spirit or Jairus season turns into a Jairus spirit, it will take over everything about your life. That's the dangerous part about disappointment. Disappointment cannot stay in one part of your life. It leaks. And when you do not have a grasp on discipleship of disappointment, you will become a disappointed person. And disappointment only leans one way, cynicism. Which is, oh, God must just not do it. Someone comes to a dad and says, don't even bother Jesus anymore. Stop it. Why are you, just leave him alone. And then this verse happens in verse 50. It says, when Jesus heard what had happened, he said to Jairus, don't be afraid, just have faith, and she will be healed. Now, it's really important, the question that we ask ourselves is faith in what? Because right now, in your generation, it actually is having a spiritual awakening. If you look on social media, we don't have to drive very far in a city like Seattle that people are seeking out psychics and mediums. Why? Because there is something written inside of human beings that want to interact with the divine. But there is a huge difference between having faith in faith and having faith in Jesus. I'm a faith person. I'm a spiritual person. I'm manifesting good things. It's a good vibe. It's a good aura. I'm putting it out there. Good things are in my future. That's karma. If I'm just good, I will manifest good things. No, that's faith in faith. And my friend, faith in faith is an extremely foolish thing. And that is not what Jesus is asking Jairus to have. He is not saying, Jairus, be a faith person, manifest it, and your daughter will live. Good things are headed your way. He is saying, have faith in me. Have faith in God. Have faith in Jesus. But here's the problem. When you face hard times, which unfortunately will come in our life, if you have been living life off of other people's faith, rumors of God, and church culture, you will be unable to have faith in Jesus. And my concern as a pastor is that when hard times come in your life, they will do one of two things. They will drive you away from Jesus or drive you closer to him. Okay, so John, how do I have faith in Jesus? Well, the single most important moment of Jesus' life was not the miracles he did. It was not the sermons that he preached, although they were pretty special. It was not the people that rebuked. It was not the water that he walked on. It was his death upon the cross. Jesus is born to the Virgin Mary. He lives 33 years on earth. He only walks and does ministry for 3 years. He raises up a few disciples and he is betrayed by them. And in his darkest hour, he is murdered by the Roman government. Remember years ago, I was in Bible college and I was in a class called Systematic Theology. And Systematic Theology is a class that goes through the building blocks of what it means to be a follower of Jesus. And I had this professor named Dr. Kowalski, and every day he would start our class by writing a topic on the whiteboard and we would go through it. Now, it was a cold, wet Seattle day in March. I barely got to class and I walked in there and I see that this man has written the cross on the whiteboard. And I gotta be really honest with you. I was like, if there is ever a day I might be able to check out, it's probably this one. Been around this thing for a while, been a Christian for a while. He He walks into the class, and my friends and I are sitting in the spot we usually sat in, and he says, "Your generation has watered down the cross." I'm like, "Oh, okay, it's 8:30, it's a little early, but I'm here, I'm ready." He said to us, "The cross is maybe the most single iconic icon on planet Earth, more than the Nike symbol, more than the Apple logo. You can go to any country and people have crosses. We put it on chains, we get it tattooed on our bodies." And he says, because of that, it has lost its significance. And he began, as all of us are leaned in now a little bit more on a Wednesday morning, he began to go through some facts about the cross. He said, the cross was not a special punishment for Jesus. He says it was actually Rome's favorite punishment to embarrass people, and thousands of people before Jesus and thousands after would be crucified. He said, the other thing we oftentimes don't understand is that most people actually didn't even make it to the cross because something called scourging happened to them. And what the Romans would do is they would take a leather whip, they called it a cat of nine tails, which had bones and metal in it, and they would whip the prisoner. I heard a thing on YouTube this last year, an old movie, The Passion of the Christ, a guy named Jim Caviezel that played Jesus. There's a scene where they portrayed that, and he was wearing a back brace, and he said that they made a mistake in the scene and one lash got through, and he said he almost passed out from the pain. It says that Jesus was beaten beyond recognition. He said, my professor, everyone now, we're locked in. We're like, this is not what I was expecting. And he says, oftentimes we think that the way someone died from crucifixion was the nails going into their hands or their feet. So the way you died from crucifixion was either you asphyxiated, you did not breathe anymore, or you had a heart attack from the trauma. He started getting emotional in this class, sitting up on his stool, and tears started coming out of his eyes. And he said, the historical, the pictures you've seen of Jesus where he's wearing the nice, perfect little loincloth? He said there is no historical account that the Romans gave them that actually it was a punishment meant to embarrass and say, this is what happens if you mess with Rome. And he looked at us with tears coming down his face and said, more than likely Jesus was murdered naked. And at this point in our class, everyone's crying and people are walking. He's rocking back and forth on his knees. And he says, I don't even want to talk about it. But he said the one historical account that we do get is that people, when they went through that kind of bodily trauma, would urinate and they would defecate upon themselves. And our whole class is in tears and we're crying and we're sitting there. And he says, do not water down what our Savior did for us. Listen, we do this odd thing where we have encounters with Jesus that change our lives, and then we walk farther along, and the thing that once had me on my knees doesn't even faze me. This morning, if you have come here for any reason other than that God did that and what was on his mind was you, if the only motivation he had, the joy that was set before him was you, and we get it written one time in the Gospels that he said, Father, forgive them for they know not what they do. But I read an article this year by a scholar that said more than likely Jesus repeated that over and over and over again as the nails were driven in. Father, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing. As he was whipped, Father, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing. As they were jeering at him and laughing at him, Father, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing. And if this has become a game to you, if this has become a social club to you, if this has become anything else, then shock and awe that a God would do that for you. Today is your day to come home.